Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of The Eye's Dream, a Japanese exploitation horror movie from 2016 that was directed by Hisayasu Sato. Now every once in a while, there's a movie that I really want to see that's impossible to find, and this is one of them. I've been trying to find this movie for the past 8 years, and going so far as to check for streaming or physical media releases on like a monthly basis. But recently I had basically given up and resigned myself to the fact that I would never get to see it. However, just a few months ago, the unbelievable happened. The Eye's Dream got a Japanese Blu-ray release with English subtitles. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to review it. Now, the following plot synopsis was taken from the website Asian Movie Pulse. That's a good website if you want, reviews on Asian movies. Maya, the protagonist of the film, is quite a character. She was abducted and assaulted when she was a child by a man who removed one of her eyes, forcing her to replace it with a fake one, and at the same time making her obsessed with eyes. Currently, Maya is a photographer who uses a very aggressive technique. She actually hunts people in the streets, shoving her camera in their faces in order to photograph their eyes from as close as possible. She exhibits the photos she acquires in a warehouse filled with every kind of digital and analog medium, including videos, screens, and framed photos, all of which depict eyes in disturbing fashion. Her girlfriend, Rie, is responsible for this techno-industrial setting. Eventually, Maya meets a neurologist named Sata, who diagnoses her with an unusual form of phantom pain, the result of her kidnapping. He also asks her to allow him to shoot a film about her in an endeavor that includes his assistant, Yuichi, following her with a camera as she photographs people. At the same time, a maniac who attacks people and takes their eyes roams the city, and Maya's former tormentor has not forgotten her. So that's a fairly outrageous premise, but it's somewhat expected, given the history of this director, Hisayasu Sato. And I think I just need to take a few minutes to discuss this guy, because it will give you an idea of what to expect while watching The Eye's Dream. Now, Sato's work has not received a lot of attention in America specifically, and that's probably because his films tend to be appreciated by niche audiences, even more niche than all of us, who are around this YouTube channel, due to his plentiful use of nudity and sex, as well as occasional bits of bloody, offensive violence. Now, some would describe him as like a maker of exploitation films, but he has a fantastic sense of style and an unconventional feel that's vaguely reminiscent of David Cronenberg's earlier works, most notably Videodrome's use of like audio-visual infused horror, I guess I would describe it as. There's a strong element of perverted voyeurism that's infused into Sato's movies as well, due to the higher sexual content that's combined with the audio-visual stuff. Like, for example, many of his characters use video camcorders as part of the story. And in this case, she's using a camera, a photo camera. Now, I'd also actually like to quote a very brief passage from Jasper Sharp's excellent book, Behind the Pink Curtain. Quote, "Fitting into the broader field of the urban paranoid fantasies that characterized the 1980s, Sato's films have been compared to those of David Cronenberg, and not wholly inappropriately. His stories occur in present-day inner-city dystopias, sleek but sterile settings in which flesh is detached from its natural organic environment, and the societal rot spreads from neglected shadows hidden beneath the neon glare. They feature characters who have fallen through the cracks, violent rogue elements who engage in acts of transgression, and sullen, withdrawn teenagers who seek affirmation of their existence through acts of prostitution, self-abuse, and voyeurism." Unquote. Now, this sub-theme is something that has popped up in many of Shinya Tsukamoto's movies over the years, especially his earlier films, and he's my favorite director of all time. So this backdrop of like the psychological consequences of urbanization and technology is something that's like right up my alley. And in his book, Sharp does mention that Sato's movies feel more like horror movies than they do exploitation films at times. And that's probably why I'm such a huge fan of this director. There are occasions where his movies can veer too hard into like pinku territory, leaning maybe into the sex too much. But that's a problem that kind of permeates that subgenre of Japanese film. But there are very few exploitation directors that I want to fully explore, and Sato is one of them. So back to The Eye's Dream. The opening scene of The Eye's Dream has this like creepy ambient score that plays over frenetic black and white footage of our protagonist, the woman, aggressively like taking pictures of people's eyes. You know, she'll see someone, she'll run up to them, grab them, and shove her camera in their face and take a picture of their eyes. A very striking way to start the film, and it's perfectly in line with what we expect from Sato. And it gives ample opportunity to explore the aforementioned themes. And instead of televisions being featured, the featured object within this film, it's cameras and pictures instead. Close-up pictures of eyeballs. There's tons of them in this. And because of this, like the set designs in the film are eye-popping. The protagonist studio is like this photo exhibition with a bunch of pictures in different colors of like eyeballs. And it's pretty creepy but cool at the same time. I love the way the film was shot overall. Like early on, there's a room full of like curtains where a fairly disturbing scene happens. But the curtains are lit by like glowing freezers in the background. And everything has like a light green tint to it in that scene, you know. And throughout the film, there's lots of bright, glowing white lights that you'll see. Which also emphasizes scenes that have like shadows and use shadows to really cool effect. There's added bonus, there's a nicely atmospheric scene in the forest. So this movie does deliver in terms of style, despite the budget that was likely very small. Now the lead actress of this film goes by the name Marissa, and her physical look and her line delivery are very well suited for a Sato film. She shifts from being like vulnerable to being aggressive at various points, which gives the impression that she's like emotionally damaged and unhinged, while at the same time being like sympathetic. So I thought she was a good casting choice, even though I'm not really familiar with her other work. Now the content in The Eye's Dream, there are some discussions on psychology, dreams, and photography that are littered throughout the film. Pretty intriguing. And this director's voyeuristic themes are enhanced with all these visuals of eyeball pictures and projected images of eyeballs. But I would not necessarily classify this as like a deep movie, you know, at least in terms of like deeply exploring all of these sub-themes. Remember, this is essentially like a horror movie, exploitation mixed in with some dodgy, potentially offensive scenes that will provoke reactions from the viewer. The themes are there, and the director plays with them, but don't go into this expecting like masterpiece level character development, all right? And the plot synopsis I mentioned earlier is very different from a lot of movies that are out there nowadays and even from the past. So this makes this film inherently interesting to watch because of its uniqueness. But above all else, folks, the most memorable aspects of The Eye's Dream are the moments of horror and exploitation. This is a very perverted film, I would say. You know, the sex scenes can get pretty graphic, and certain sexual acts can be quite wince-worthy. And I won't spoil the surprises for you, but there are things that happen, even in the opening act of this movie, that'll leave you just shaking your head, like you'll be just asking yourself, like, what am I watching here, you know? And to me, personally, that's a huge positive, you know? A lot of us have seen a lot of movies, you know, a lot of people that come to this channel and watch stuff. We've seen a bunch of different kinds of movies. When you see stuff that's like, wow, I've never quite seen that before, it's brownie points. Like, how many times can you say that? And there's stuff in this movie you'll probably never see in any other film for the rest of your life. So I'll just tell you that. At one point, our protagonist finds something creepy in a refrigerator or a freezer and proceeds to interact with it in an extremely demented way. I love it. Such a memorable moment of true cinema. But this movie is always kind of creepy. Like, near the beginning, you're thinking to yourself, is this a horror movie, really? You know, you get little sprinkles of horror, but it's like, even in the exploitative elements, there's like a creepiness to them in the way they're executed. But the horrific tone like slowly increases as the film progresses, and there are some bits of bloody violence that are saved for like the second half specifically. And they're visually disturbing and do deliver for fans of like more violent Japanese horror movies. So, to sum it all up, The Eye's Dream is like the kind of movie that excites me. You know, movies like this are why I still like watching Japanese movies in general. You know, this is not for everyone because the content is wildly perverted. As I've mentioned multiple times in this review. But if you want something that's different and kind of warped, I strongly recommend this. And if you're a fan of the director, it's basically a must-watch. It's currently available on Japanese Blu-ray with English subtitles. And as always, folks, I'll see you next time.